Good morning and welcome to our final ISM Lunch and Learn for May 2018. Happy Memorial Day weekend, everyone. Today we're going to be looking at Sage Fixed Assets Tracking with Mr. Wayne Austin, Sales Engineer from Sage Software Fixed Asset Division. Wayne will be presenting this and we are looking forward to it. Thank you, Wayne, and welcome.
Thanks, Sherry. My name is Wayne Austin. I'm a sales engineer with Sage Software. And for those of you who are viewing our second portion of this webinar series, as you know, I covered the depreciation module last week, and this week I will be going over the tracking module as well as the planning modules. So just a quick recap, as you know, the depreciation module, of course, is the core of the solution where you'll handle all of your financial depreciation for your tax book, financial book, state, and so on. And the tracking module is what's actually used for doing your physical inventory and reconciliation, where you'll be able to, for example, attach barcode labels to your assets, scan them while doing a physical inventory to confirm that you actually have all of the assets you should have where you should have them, so that you're not actually paying insurance premium, for example, for assets that are no longer in service and should have been disposed. The planning module, of course, will handle your construction in progress or CIP, any type of projects you have going, and I will be covering both of those modules today. Okay, so I'm actually going to start off into the depreciation module just to point out a couple of things as to where these all intersect. So as you know, in the depreciation module, you can create groups based on any criteria you want to, and it's typically a good idea to do that based on location or asset class or whatever criteria you may want to use. And those groups that you create here are also going to be available in the tracking module. So if you want to, for example, to be able to segment out doing your physical inventory and sending that data out to multiple people at different sites, that's a good way of doing that by leveraging the ability to be able to create groups. Additionally, any of the templates you created or anything, images you have attached, all of this is going to be available in the same database. So you will be able to access all of that information, since it's actually using the same database. When I go in the tracking module, you will actually see that all of the same groups, all of the same information is going to be available there. Now, however, in the tracking module, there will not actually be any access to the book field information. Once I go into an asset detail, you will see that you're only able to see the general information fields. Now, I'm getting this pop-up when I'm opening the tracking module because I'm actually taking advantage of one of the features here where you can actually check out assets to individuals and know when they're due back, and also get a notification if you're opening that company and you have assets that have been checked out and have not been returned. So you can actually go ahead and say yes, and you can actually see the list of assets that have been checked out and not returned. They're in a group called overdue assets. There's also a quick report that you can run, and you can see what a bit more details about those particular assets. So for example, I can see here, looking at my list, that I've got, for example, tag number 106978. It's a Dell laptop, was checked out on July 10th, who was checked out by, when it was due back, and it has not been returned. It would also flag any assets that were returned later than they were expected return. So that's why you see this one showing up on this report as well. So it's just one of the handy features that you can take advantage of in the system. Now, if I actually go into any of my asset details, you will actually be able to see that I can access any of the general information fields, but no access to the book information fields. So if, for example, you're separating responsibilities where you have your accounting department or tax department handling your tax and financial depreciation, but you may have asset managers or IT or other groups that are responsible for doing the physical inventory. So they cannot access the book fields at all, but however, they can access all of the general information fields, and they get an additional 12 fields in this module that are tracking specific. So for example, if IT wants to leverage using some of these additional fields, or if you're in a manufacturing environment, you need some additional information, you can certainly use these fields to capture more details of the assets. And the images you have attached are still also here. Of course, you also have a notes area, so all of this is going to be the same. And if I go to open my company, you will see in my database list, I have all of the same companies that I had available in my depreciation module. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and reopen my company. Now, one other thing I wanted to point out is that there's going to be a couple of different methods for actually scanning these assets. This is just a PDF I created based on the asset ID fields and the barcodes generated from that. So when you scan a barcode, it's actually going to translate to the number in that asset ID field. And that's how the system will actually work, where you can actually use a standard handheld scanner, or you will be able to use an Android app, so an Android phone or an Android tablet with the app where you can actually scan the barcodes and do your physical inventory in this manner and update field information as well. So I will actually walk through a sample inventory so that you're able to see what the process would look like. So I'm simply going to define an inventory. I'm just going to create it based on a subset of my assets. Just going to name it Wayne's Test Inventory, assign it to me. And this will be a dynamic inventory where I'm going to actually go out and do an inventory of just a subset of my assets. I'm simply going to use one of the groups I have created, which is just consists of slightly over 50 assets, and these are just assets that are at my store number 1, and they're just asset class computer equipment. Now you can choose what fields you actually want to push out to a standard scanner or to an Android device, and it'll take up to 12 fields. So you can kind of think about what information would you want someone to be able to update on the fly while in the process of actually doing a physical inventory. It appears I do have a duplicate tag. So this is one of the things that will catch you so that you can make sure that there's no duplication. Unlike the system number, which is automatically assigned by the software, the asset ID field or asset tag you have full control of. So it appears I do have a duplicate tag here. And so I will need to go in and change one of those. Each of those fields must be unique. So let's see, I will need to find that tag number. There we go. And it was this computer. So I'm simply going to change that number so it's no longer the same, and I can actually now go ahead and run my duplicate tag, and there are some blank entries, but there are no duplicates. Oops, I need to save that change and check it again. And oh, that is also a duplicate. So I guess I am going to make one more change to that and save it. and make sure it is completely gone. So we'll not allow any duplicate. There you go. That's what we want to see, is no duplicate tags. So, all right. Now I can actually go in and define my inventory. So now I'm going to actually go ahead and set up my readers, and I'm going to actually push this out to my Android device as well as to a virtual reader, so you can see here on the screen what that process would look like in both scenarios. So I'm going to go ahead and select my Android device. It's going to have me log into Microsoft OneDrive. And that is a difference between the two, by the way. If you're using an Android device, it will send the inventory list out over Microsoft OneDrive. If you're using a traditional handheld scanner, it will actually push that out via Bluetooth or over a USB connection. Now, there are some new traditional handheld scanners that are coming out that will support various operating systems, including Android OS, so that will also be an option as well. And I'm using two-factor authentication. So now that inventory list has been sent out to my Android device. Now I'm also going to send the same list to a virtual reader, which you'll be able to see here on the screen, so that I can actually simulate that environment. So what I'm going to do, since this is not a physical scanner, I can simply type in a few of these asset IDs to ensure that I can scan those devices. And I'm going to just go ahead and accept this with no changes. And so I've done a couple of scenarios where I made no changes. I'll do a couple here that I'll actually make some changes so that you can see how easy it is to update information. So let's say I scanned the barcode, but actually found the particular asset maybe in a different floor and maybe a different room number. I can update that information on the fly while doing my inventory. Okay. And let's say I'm going to go ahead and change some other information on this one. Let's say it's actually assigned to someone else. And I'll even go ahead and change my building number as well as maybe what floor it's on and room number as well. And I'm going to actually now go ahead and add an asset from this standpoint. So I'm going to just simply simulate adding an asset tag that didn't exist. Let's say you drop ship some equipment to one of the sites and you want to be able to add an asset from this standpoint. I can actually go in here and populate that information. So what asset class it is, maybe what location. I know I'm doing my inventory at store number 1, so that's certainly where it would be. And I should know what building I'm in and put in as much detail as I'm able to for the particular item or items that I'm adding. So in this case, I'm going to say it's a Dell computer. And quantity, I'm using a field for that, some quantity of 1. You may not know all of the information. If you do, you just populate as much as you can. The main point here is I wanted to be able to show how the process works if you do want to add an asset from this point. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. And I'm going to now exit from that device. So I'm going to switch screens and actually now go into my Android device. So if I open my app, I can actually now select to go and download my latest inventory list. And that's the one that I created. So I'm going to now download that inventory so that I can actually do that. Now, here's a prior inventory that I did. If you notice, it's got a green check mark, means that one's been complete. This is another one that is in progress. And if you look here, this is the one that I actually just did today. So I'm going to go into that. And now I can actually go in and accept or scan for any of these additional items. I can manually go ahead and change the status to found since I'm not actually scanning it here. So I can manually do it, say everything is fine, and made no changes. But I can, however, of course, scan it, which is going to be the much faster way. So I've got a printout of some of the barcodes here. So I'm simply going to just scan a few of these. Okay. All right, so this is one that I did not have. I'm not going to go ahead and add a new one in this case here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that one. But I'm going to go ahead and update some of the equipment as I've previously done, some of the information on that particular device. So let's say it's in a different room number, and maybe I found, let's say it's assigned to someone that I didn't have assigned here. So you can actually really work through scanning the list of assets quite quickly and do your inventory. So I'm not going to actually go through scanning all of these devices. So in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and complete my inventory with just the items found. And just to show you what the reconciliation process is like, I'm going to upload my inventory list as completed. And now we will go back into the tracking module so that we can receive the data from the two different devices. So you can send your inventory list out to multiple devices. You can send a portion of your assets, all of the assets, whatever workflow is going to make more sense to you. Now, all of the devices, when I go to receive my data, is going to show the entire list of devices that I've pushed them out to, be they traditional scanners or Android devices. And they will all show up here in the list as well. So I'm going to go ahead and receive the data. It's pulling that down from Microsoft OneDrive for my Android device. And now for my virtual reader, I'm actually going to go ahead and receive that information. And so that we can actually now go through what the reconciliation process completely entails. So I'm going to now reconcile my inventory. So this is the part now that you have some decisions to make. Now, in my case, I simply did not look for all of my assets, which is why I have not found them. But when you are doing a physical inventory, this is typically where you're going to start identifying if you've got assets that are missing, lost, or stolen, or they've been moved around and you had no idea. Now, items not found, I would recommend inactivating those assets. That's going to stop them from showing up on your reports, for example, and you can actually export the reconciliation report so that you can now do a further investigation and figure out where they actually are. Should they have been disposed? Have they been thrown away, discarded, or sold off, and no one's provided the information? Or do you have, some type of an issue going on in the company where things are walking away? But you'll want to make a final determination. So I definitely recommend inactivating those assets until you make a final determination, and then you can do a proper disposal at that point. So in my case, I just didn't look for everything, so I'm simply going to not reconcile that group. Now, next group I'm going to look at are going to be assets with changes. So it's actually going to bring that information in regardless of which device found it. And it's going to show you the original data, and it's going to show you what was changed. So if you notice in this particular case, I changed the floor number and room number for that particular asset. With this one, I changed multiple pieces of information. Same with this one as well. So I can now choose to go ahead and update that information. And by the way, if you're using the Android devices, you could actually take pictures of the asset if you didn't previously have an image of the asset, and then you can actually choose to update those changes with or without images. So I'm simply going to apply to all and accept the changes. Now, next up is going to be new assets. So there's actually now two assets that I'm adding that you will see in the system here. Okay, and they're both computers. So I'm going to go ahead and say, yes, I want to add these items, and I'm going to apply to all. And this is where the templates are now going to come in handy. I'm going to say I want to use my computer template, since these are Dell computers, and I'm going to apply that. Okay. Next, oops. Of course, the last item we want to look at are the assets with no changes. So you simply just go ahead and accept all of those because those are the assets that were found with no changes required. Now you can actually continue through where you can actually see that reconciliation report that, of course, you can now send that out to your various locations and see if any of the items that are missing are actually in other locations so that you can update that information. So here are some of the items that I have that are missing. Exception code of N means not found. These are the ones with no changes, status of O. These are the ones that I did make some changes to where I accepted the changes. And then these are actually the new assets that I added that are actually using those templates. So I would simply export this report. I would probably export it out to an Excel format where I can now circulate this to the other locations where people can check, hey, tag number such and such is an iPad Pro. Is it at your location? And they can send you the updated information, which you can then update in the database. Okay. So now, if I go back to my asset list, I can now go to my full list and I'll be able to see those new additions that I made. And that's going to be these two computers. Okay. And as you can see, because I use a template, it did capture the additional information. So it's using the same database and will update on the fly once you're in the tracking module. Okay. So now if I actually go back in my depreciation module, they will actually show up in a group called inactive assets, which means these are assets that do not have all the information they need to be complete. And if you look at them here, you will actually see that there's no book information. So I can simply now provide them a place and service date, give them a value. So let's say I'm going to place them in service today. I'm going to go ahead and assign the value, which you would, of course, you would get from your invoices. Oops. And computers, I'm going to make that 5 years. And I'm going to actually push that out across all the assets. So now this asset is ready to be depreciated. Of course, I could attach an image since I didn't actually take one, and I do have some Dell images here. So I will actually go ahead and link this image. I can actually view the image before, so that's it, and it's linked to it now. So this asset is now going to be ready to start depreciation as soon as I hit save. It's got everything it needs. And it will no longer show up in that group called incomplete assets. It's going to actually now be here in your complete assets listing. And I've not run depreciation yet, so of course it's sitting here waiting until the next time I run depreciation, where it's now going to pick up that new addition. Okay, so let's switch gears now. We want to keep on track with time, so I do want to go ahead and go into the planning module. Now, before I do that, I'm going to show you what an asset looks like when coming from the planning module because of using templates. So I actually have an item here that I previously sent over. It's a heavy equipment trailer that I sent from the planning module, and because I applied a template, it came populated with all of this information as well as depreciation method. Now it would have gotten the value and placed in service date from the planning module, but I wanted to share with you why using these templates are helpful, and I actually have a trailer template here that was applied to this particular item. So I will now go into the planning module so we can take a look at that portion of the solution. Now, of course, you can have multiple projects in the system, and it can provide you a lot of tools for managing the budget for your projects, as well as being able to send them over to start depreciation once spending is complete on any individual line item within a project, even if the project is not complete. Now, some helpful information you can see up front is going to show you what's spent or unspent of the budget. You can see what's capitalized, what's expensed. Of course, you can see your total transaction count. Now, I've got an original budget of $2.5 million in my particular project. I later came back and created a revised budget. So it's actually tracking my spend against both an original and a revised budget. Now, you don't have to have a revised budget, but if you certainly choose to, you can. So if you look at a scenario where you're only using a revised budget, if costs are running above expected and you need to change that budget, if I simply came here and changed my original budget, I would have no way of tracking my performance against that original number. So by creating that revised budget, I can now see where I was against that original number, as well as where I am against my adjusted budget. Now, if you look at each of these line items that are in my particular project here, these line items are what can become a fixed asset. So if you notice, some of them have a status of S, some will have a status of C. The ones with a status of S have already been sent to start depreciation. The ones with a status of C, spending is complete, but they have not been sent. So I want to go straight to that heavy equipment trailer that I showed you in the depreciation module that was originally sent from here. If you notice now, you see quite a bit of information about each individual line item. You can see what the original budget is, what your actual spend is, and where you are against that spend. Now, if I drill down into the details, you'll see you've got quite a few fields here. All of these fields are customizable. So if you want to, for example, capture where there's an approval process, what type of budget category you're actually using, maybe who contractors are, project managers, whatever the case may be, estimated hours, you can customize these fields for whatever information you need. And these fields can actually be mapped to fields in the depreciation module. So if you do want to carry over any of this information, you absolutely can. Now, this particular line item, I had an original budget only, and I did not have a need for creating a revised budget. It's a capital item, but it can also be expensed depending on your requirements. And of course, you can use CIP account codes, or you can assign your standard GL account codes. Now, if you look at the transactions below this, each of these could be coming from invoices for the individual pieces, be it engineering, wiring, permits, whatever invoice you may have. And again, you will have fields that you can customize at this level, because you'll want to be able to keep track of individual costs for these and any other information that you would need. Now, these transactions are grayed out because this particular line item has already been sent over to start depreciation. Now, if you look at my asset information screen, this is where you can see I told it spending is complete, the data was completed, what template to use. I'm pointing it to my trailer template and my in-service date. And if I wanted to, I could have even split this out into multiple assets. So let me actually go to one that's not been sent over yet, like my HVAC unit here, where I've told it spending is complete. This is where you can actually see your entire list of templates. So having these templates is very important and very helpful in this scenario, because you can actually send these items over ready to start depreciation with all the information it needs. Set your place and service date, of course, provide a description. I can have it split into multiple assets of equal value if I choose, or I can manually assign individual values to the number of assets that I want to split it to. So I could certainly take advantage of any of those type of scenarios. Okay. And in the case of, let's say your project has a large number of transactions. So this is the line item level. These are the transaction levels, which could be, of course, from invoices for permits, landscaping, architectural, whatever it may be. All of these can actually be imported from Excel, and you can import them en masse to go to multiple line items or to go to multiple projects and multiple line items as well. So you do have the ability to import data into the system, as well as being able to send these items over en masse to start depreciation. So if I'm actually ready to send everything where spending is now complete, I can simply go to line items. I can tell it to go ahead and create assets. And if I've got multiple companies in my database, it's going to show me all of the companies that I have. And I can simply go here and say, okay, I want to send these to company A. I want to send the rest of these to company B, and so on. Or I could select all, send them to a single company. And if you notice, one line item is being split into 4 here. The rest of these are just going to be a single asset, but I could easily create all of these in one shot at any point, even if the entire project has not been complete. Now, let's talk a little bit about the reporting aspect of this. Of course, you'll want to be able to do some consolidated reporting to look at multiple projects. So you do have that ability, and you can actually see this information in subtotals only against your original or revised budget. So if I run this, for example, looking at my subtotals only against my original budget, I can quickly see for all of my projects what my original budget was, my actual spend, whether or not I'm over or under budget. So I can see exactly what's going on. So in the case of a scenario where you're over budget, you may want to drill down. So if I want to switch now to see this in detail, I can look at the same report in full detail where I can see every line item and I can identify where exactly things are going wrong with the spend. This line item is 69,000 over budget. My HVAC unit, for example, I'm 7,800 and over budget as well. So you can see where problem areas were. And of course, you'll get the totals for each. So you can look at your reporting information in detail or in summary, and there's many other reports within the system. Now, if you do have the custom reporting feature, this is something that would be well worth taking advantage of. You actually have the ability to create custom reports in Crystal. Which of course, when you open that up, you can now refresh that data and you can literally build anything you want to. So this is part of the same custom reporting that's available in the depreciation module, extends over to here as well, and it's fully integrated in the database. So you can simply create any type of reports you want, since you have access to every field in the database. If the standard reports aren't everything that you need, you have the ability to create custom reports. So, and of course, as I stated, you can have multiple projects in the system. So now I'm going to go back to my depreciation module where we can, of course, see that same trail I sent over. And again, I want to reinforce the importance of leveraging templates. It helps you in many scenarios, because you can actually leverage using that in your planning module. Okay, you can actually take advantage of that. It helps with asset addition in the depreciation module. You can leverage using these templates as well in the tracking module, where if you're adding assets, you can tell it to apply a template. But also from your Sage 100 or Sage 300 or other ERP systems, we have direct integration with, of course, most of our Sage ERP systems. And if you're using an outside system, another system, custom integration can be created. So there are quite a bit of flexibility with the system, with the solution, to meet whatever your business requirements are. And that is all of the information that I had to follow up on the planning module and the tracking module to give you the total solution for our Sage fixed assets.
Thank you so
And
very
thank you
much,
for your
Wayne,
time.
for that informative presentation. I really, really appreciate it. Stay tuned, everyone, for the June schedule for the ISM Lunch and Learns. We look forward to seeing you soon. And Wayne, as always, I thank you so much for your time. Take care,
You're very
everyone.
welcome.
Thanks, Wayne. Bye-bye.